Welcome to our second talk story, where I talk about the second Transformer that I ever received as a child growing up. And you're going to be seeing that Transformer come to life in my artwork that has been sped up through the magic of whatever app I'm using. Spoiled rotten, let me tell you. The first ever Transformer that I received, and it was probably, to this day, one of the best from the G1 series. And now we move on to my next one, and it was no slouch either. An amazing character with a very unique sounding voice. A unique transformation alt mode as well that worked really well with roleplay. Here you had this massive robot with this really cool weapon that fires missiles as well as a over-the-shoulder cannon. But not just that, but it also came with a little golden accessory that had this small little plastic rectangle that imitates a cassette, a mini cassette. Now, I thought that was pretty amazing, especially since the details on this figure in alt mode were just mind-blowing. Like, those little blue weapons were like the same size as an actual battery. And those batteries could slide in a hidden panel behind its back. And that panel doubled as a hip clip to place the Walkman onto your belt or your waistband of your shorts or your pants. I was just amazed. I'm like, wow, this thing is so cool. When I received my Soundwave, I don't remember there ever being a set of headphones. And it could have just have been me or maybe my copy. I'm not sure. I don't know if North America actually received headphones, but I do remember actually finding a set of headphones. And there was this little hole, a little port on the side of the alt mode that you could actually fit that 3.5 millimeter plug into, and it worked perfectly. There was a sound adjustment dial, and there was an AM/FM switch. There were play, rewind, fast forward, stop, and record buttons on the front plate of this thing. I mean, it really did a good job at committing itself to the role of being a mini cassette recorder. So on the top of the recorder, you press that little button and out pops a little cassette tray, and you could slide that little accessory, little golden rectangle, right into that cavity and close it up and pretend that you're listening to music all day long. Now that little rectangle, that little golden guy, his name was Buzzsaw. Buzzsaw didn't get a lot of play when it came to the original 1980s cartoon. To me, he seemed like a more menacing character than Laserbeak, but he had less airtime on the episodes. But it was really nice to see that there was an additional flavor when it came to that particular mold. Because a lot of these things came with doubles, right? Laserbeak and Buzzsaw, you had Frenzy, you had Rumble. Then, of course, you had the three jets that came inside this wave, Starscream, Skywarp, and Thundercracker. Hasbro was just like going and blowing when it came to just recoloring the same thing over and over again. How many times can we get these people to buy the same exact thing, but in a varied color scheme, you know? The show to me was amazing. These characters were amazing. And I was just happy to receive those things, no matter what form they came in at the time. Because back then there was really no scale or no issues when it came to looking exactly like what you saw on the TV. It was close enough. The alt mode shared enough with what it looked like on screen. You'd see the sports cars, you see the semi-truck, you see the jets, you see the gun. And all these things would be okay if the robot mode was a little bit lackluster. It would be all right. And we had such imagination growing up that we could even take other cars. Like for me, I never had Prowl and I never had Blue Streak, two of my favorite characters from the original season 1. But I did have a Smokescreen, and that guy stood in as my Prowl moving forward. I never used him as a Smokescreen. I used him as my Prowl. Even the red, white, and blue color was not going to stop me from him being a black and white police cruiser. So my birthday came rolling along, and as a very blessed and lucky child, I was fortunate enough to receive this guy and a couple of other things. I mean, this was an expensive figure. I believe it was Optimus Prime, Megatron, and Soundwave. I believe they were the three most expensive figures from the Transformers line at the time. Soundwave wasn't the only thing I received for my birthday. I believe I got a couple of things from my He-Man set and whatnot, because that's what I was actually into before collecting the Transformers, was He-Man. I only ever had a few of those figures, but the ones that I had, I just loved those things too. But I had moved on. Transformers wasn't the end of what I had collected before I became too old for toys. I was never too old for toys. I always enjoyed toys and the way they looked, but nothing really grabbed my attention anymore. Not like the Transformers did. Originally started with a pilot, and that pilot kind of explained the entire lore of the Transformers, which then later on they had to kind of like make corrections and amend things. The Autobots no longer could fly after the first initial release of the pilot. They had to establish certain rules for the certain factions, and those things came about during the second season. That's when I received this Soundwave. Owning a Soundwave and playing with that as a child, I became more immersed into being a part of the Transformers because I wore Soundwave on my hip as if I were a character in the Transformers series. Like he was walking around with me, trying to infiltrate what I was going to have for dinner, trying to infiltrate into what other things I'm interested at school or who I'm talking about. You know, he has that little buzzsaw mini cassette in his chest recording all of my conversations that I have with my other action figures. You know, it added a sense of anxiety because of who he was and what he represented. The transformation into his robot mode, man, that thing was a behemoth. It was huge. And the fact that he came with 2 figures, what a bonus. Now I had a total of 3 Transformers. Of all the things that I received throughout my birthday, you know, socks, shirts, shorts, the Soundwave and Buzzsaw 2 set was my favorite thing that I received on my birthday. But anyway, that's going to be it for today's talk story. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing this story as much as I enjoyed making it. But that's it for this talk story, number 2, Soundwave. See you next time.